Great. Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome again to Path of the Just, finding our path towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to becoming closer to Hashem. Tonight we're going to deal with chapter 19, Bevia Chelkei Chassidus. Chassidus, as we discussed in the past, the higher level that a Jew should aspire to, the level of tzidkus, to be a tzaddik. A tzaddik basically means doing everything it says in the Shulchan Aruch. A chassid goes one step beyond. Lifnin mishur sadin, beyond the letter of the law, as it says in English. Do you think it's worth commenting, because it's going to sort of touch on this a little bit, that the idea of Chassidut is obviously connected to the root, which is chesed. Chesed means kindness. And a lot of times you see Chazal spoke about avas chesed, the love of chesed. Love, ava v'chesed, nusach, sfarad. Love and kindness go together. Real love is exhibited through kindness, and the whole of the Bria is created because, so to speak, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love, which expressed itself in His kindness in creating us. There's no reason for us to exist apart from the fact that Hashem wanted to be mitchased, to do kindness with another entity called man. Of course, this is all called, according to our understanding, on the ultimate level, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is echad. His oneness precludes the existence of anything apart from Him. But on our level, Yesharim goes to this in great detail. From our perspective, where there is a world, we understand that the whole creation of the world was predicated on chesed. So really, the higher we reach up the ladder to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the closer we have to come to this ikka, this principle, which all the world really is founded on and founded for, which is the idea of chesed and love, the two things which go together. Love is a very strange thing if you think about it. You can't measure it. You can't put it in a test tube. And everybody understands there is something called love. I once wrote a poem called The Unseen Hand. I think it went like this, I've forgotten it. Of all the things that show the unseen hand, love is the most beautiful. The fact that something called love exists, that really is an emotion which from a pragmatic point of view has no necessity in the existence of the world. An atheist might say that really we don't need love, all we need are desires. All we need is the desire to live, the desire to, and I think Freud basically understood everything was based on our impulses, and the impulse, the drive for sex was the greatest of all these. There are other drives for power, for domination. Love is really something completely redundant, but from that point of view. But from our point of view, the whole basis of the existence is based on love. Kadosh Baruch Hu loved, and therefore He gave. We've spoken about in previous meetings the idea of that not only loving leads to giving, but giving leads to love. When a person gives to something, gives to somebody, he finds that he is emotionally involved with that. People have pets because there's an inbuilt desire, an inbuilt need in a person to love, to give. And if they don't have children, sometimes if they do have children, sometimes people get on better with their pets than with their children, but hopefully not. But inbuilt into the very fabric of the human being is this desire, this need to love and to give, and that's because we are B'Tselem Elokim. We are created in God's image. And just as God, so to speak, wants to give, so man is created with that same irrational or super rational, maybe one would say, desire to give and to love. So the reason I'm saying this is Chassidus, which is based on the word chesed, really is that brings us closer and closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And of course, the way we align ourselves with Hashem is to make ourselves more and more like Him, so to speak, as much as we can. The closer somebody is, the closer somebody takes it upon himself to resemble, to imitate, B'Tselem Elokim, to try and be as much as possible what Hashem wanted from man. What does He want from me? What am I supposed to be? I'm supposed to, as much as I can, be like Him, as much, because He's a Baal Chesed, so we should do Chesed. So the whole idea of Chassidus is this idea which is rooted in love, which is the desire and the love of Hashem, which wants me to become closer to Hashem by imitating Him. So that's just a brief introduction to talk about Chassidus. He says, Chelke Chassidus Haroshaim Shalosha. There are three main branches, divisions of Chassidus. Harishim b'maaseh, actions, Hasheni b'ofen asiyah, in the manner of doing that action. In other words, an action has to be chosen. So the choice of what we do, and then how we do that action once we've chosen it. And Ashlishi b'kavanah. Kavanah is an interesting. We spoke about kavanah in previous weeks. The idea of what is going on in my mind while I'm doing this thing. What are my motivations? What is the spiritual input that I'm putting into this physical action? When I'm doing this physical action, I'm imbuing it. I'm charging it with a certain spiritual energy, a certain understanding, a certain commitment, a certain aspiration. So that's going to be the third element here. And he also says that the Chelek Harishon b'maaseh af hu ischalek l'shnei chalakim. This first idea of actions, deeds, are also divided into two areas. One is concerning Adam ben Adam l'makom, man and God, or really should say God and man, and the other one really from our relationship man and God. And the second is between Adam v'chaveiro, man and his neighbor. Those are the two, says the Ramchal, spheres of human interface. A man and his connection to God, and a man his connection to his fellow. There is a third relationship that a man has. He doesn't mention it here, and that is bein Adam la'atzmo, the relationship that a person has to himself. Let me illustrate this idea. We're in the time now of the 3 weeks, period of the greatest tragedies of Jewish history have taken place typically in this time of the year. And as we see, we progressively take upon ourselves more and more of the attributes of mourning, of Avelut, as we get closer and closer to Tisha B'Av. And as well known, Gemara says that the first Beis Hamikdash was Nechrav, was destroyed because of the three Gimel Averos, the three most serious sins, which are Gilui Arayas, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah means idol worship, Shvichas Damim means murder, and Gilui Arayas means sexual immorality. These three are parallel to the three areas. They are the ultimate breakdown of the three areas of the relationship of man in the world. Obviously, the ultimate breakdown between his relationship of man, ben Adam Chavero, is Avodah Zarah. Idol worship is the antithesis of closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the ultimate breakdown of Adam L'Makom. The ultimate breakdown of the relationship between man and his fellow, Adam L'Chavero, is obviously murder. Murder is the antithesis of V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. That's the ultimate breakdown of that relationship. Now it's interesting, the ultimate breakdown of the relationship between Adam la'atzma, man and himself, is sexual immorality. Now, of course, apart from the fact that there are isurim in the Torah which prohibit certain physical relationships, and therefore they are aveiros, and therefore one could understand, of course, on every level, bein adam lechaveiro as well. Somebody killing somebody is also a breakdown in your relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, because the Torah says don't murder. But apart from the obvious base level transgression of the mitzvah, we're dealing with sort of areas of the breakdown of the relationship, and the breakdown of Adam la'atzmo, the breakdown of with a person's relationship with himself, is in relationship to Gilui Arayas. Sexual immorality is a breakdown of the relationship between a person and himself. It's arguable that if it were not for prohibited in the Torah, sexual immorality could be under certain circumstances. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, condoning it in any way at all, but I'm saying in a certain sense it doesn't hurt anybody. It's not murdering anybody. And as we said before, apart from the fact that it's an Issa D'Oraisa, it's not an Avodah Zorah, so to speak. A person could believe 100% in the Kodesh Baruch Hu and still want to be over on these Aveiras. What it does, though, immorality is a counterfeit version of who a human being really is. That a person, so to speak, descends from his Tzelem Elokim, from his Demut Elokai, his similarity, so to speak, to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. His level of being the most elevated of all God's creations, to becoming less, to becoming more physical, more of an animal. It loses in his Tzelem Elokim, it loses in his Tzelem of being a man, bein Adam la'atzmo. I mean, a lot of popular culture is based on this idea, you're not hurting anybody, and if that's what a person wants to do. From a Jewish point of view, apart from there being Isuri in the Torah, it is a lack in a person's Tzelem Elokim, of being a man in the sense that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us as human beings. We become, in a sense, less human. We become more animal. Chas v'chalila. I was thinking, I didn't see this anywhere, but just to share it with you, that in anything which goes in threes, one can probably understand a relationship between the avos. And if I'm putting it together, I think I would say that Avram Avinu, who was the pillar of Chesed, so to speak, is the ideal relationship, as we were going to speak about, between Adam. No, I want to take that back. Avram Avinu was the first one to be makir as boiroi, to recognize Hashem. Avram Avinu was the first one to create a relationship between Adam lemokoim. Avram Avinu was the one who looked into the Bria. The famous Medrash says that he saw the world as a bira dolekes, a burning, or a palace which was alight. Dolekes could mean literally burning, or it could be illuminated. And he said it's impossible that there should be a lighted palace such as this, the world, and there is no Adon of the Bira, there's no Lord of the manna, so to speak. And when he intuited this, when Avram Avinu understood this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol peeked out and said, I am the master, I am the Lord of the manna, and revealed himself to Avram Avinu. I once heard in the name of Moshe Shapiro Zatzal that Bira Dolekes, as we said, can also mean that it's on fire. Fire has the ability to reduce everything to its total elemental components. everything becomes reduced to ash, to whatever unifies everything in the Bria. And that's what Avraham Avinu saw. When he meant by Bira Dolekes, he saw that at root, everything was one in this world. When you take something and you burn it, you, so to speak, reduce it to its total, unique element. Common, everything, when you burn anything, if you burn it to a certain, to its ultimate stage of being burnt, it becomes the same thing. In meaning, Avraham Avinu intuited the essential unity of everything in the world, and that's what brought him to Hashem Echad. So Avraham Avinu, I would suggest, is the relationship between Adam and Lamokom. Yitzchak Avinu is the relationship, maybe we could say, between Adam Lechavero. You could probably say the other, I'm just thinking now I could say it the other way around as well, but let's go with this Mahalach. Because if the opposite of Yitzchak, do you know something? I want to leave this because I know I see a flaw in my story, so and I will come back to this. I want to rethink it. Okay, so let's get back to the Mesilas Yesharim. Yeah. So as we said, the Chelek Rishon is between Adam Lamokom. He says there are only two relationships here. Why he leaves the third one out, I'm not sure. But the two relationships he describes are bin Adam Lamokom and bin Adam Lechavero. So he now starts talking about the Chelek Harishon V'Rishon Shehu B'Maaseh bin Adam Lamokom, a man and Hashem. V'inyono kiyum kol hamitzvos kol dikdukim shebehem ad mokum sheyad ha'adam magas, to fulfill all of the mitzvahs to the nth degree, as we might say in English. Ve'eleim hashikarim hachachamim sharei mitzvah. This is what's called the shari means the leftovers of the mitzvahs, but it means everything that's possibly connected with the mitzvah. As it says in Sukkah, the Gemara Sukkah, Sharei mitzvah ma'akvim es ha'puronos. It prevents punishments. Because it's true that without completing these diktukim, these extremely precise ideas, which are called the Sharei mitzvah, a person discharges his obligation. And of course that would be enough for the general klal of the Jewish people. But a person who wants to be, again, this is for somebody who wants to become a chassid, he has to increase these as much as he possibly can to fulfill all the diktukim. So he gives some examples here. This is an interesting example. He says to return l'sheva veda shemitzad hadin ein chiyuv. A person takes upon himself to return a lost object, even though mitzad hadin, from the strict letter of the law, he's not obliged to. For example, if a person finds money and it doesn't have any siman, it's not left in a certain pattern that would suggest that somebody left it there deliberately. If you find money in most circumstances, you have no obligation to try and find who it belonged to. But it would be considered midas Chassidus to go out of your way and say, put up a notice to say, did anybody leave a sum of money, I don't know, in the base medrash and after mincha this afternoon? You're not mechuyev to do that. Because the idea is that a person understands when money falls out of his pocket, he's miyayish from it, he, so to speak, despairs from ever seeing it coming back to himself, and therefore he relinquishes his ownership of it. So it basically becomes ownerless. But even though, technically speaking, it's ownerless, but a person who wants to be mitchased, wants to be a chassid, he should do his best to try and find who owns it. That's one example he gives. Okay, so he said that another side of this is a person should be ma'amik, he should go into depth, into thinking about the kavanah of the mitzvahs. Meaning, we've seen this idea before, that I look at the mitzvah as a template. I see the sort of thing, so to speak, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. As we spoke about before, last week I think it was, about the idea of a son who wants to please his father, that the merest hint from the father will indicate to him the sort of area that an action would please him. So that's the idea that when you fulfill a mitzvah, that you think about you think about the mitzvah and what the mitzvah is, and so you're able, of course, without going into Baal Tosef or anything, but you extrapolate from that. Okay, so that's one. That's what he talks about, the Sharia mitzvahs. That's been Odom L'Mokom. Now, the next part we said is Chelik HaSheni, Shebarishon. We talk about the actions now of Chassidus. The actions, the second part, was that between Odom L'Chaveiro, between man and his fellow. Excuse me. He says, the subject here is to doing good in abundance, meaning that a person should always, in benefiting his fellow creature, of course, he should never injure them. And this applies to the body, now 3 subdivisions: the body, the belongings, and the soul of one's neighbor. Odom L'Chaveiro, which, as we said, there are 2 main parts to the Maisa, the action of Chassidus. We divided that between Odom L'Mokom and Odom L'Chaveiro. Now, Odom L'Chaveiro splits into 3 further subdivisions, which is the body, the belongings, and the soul. And we're going to go into those in details. So I just saw something here which I liked. He should always, what does this mean? He should always be doing good. You can't always be doing good to people. What does it mean, he'll always be doing good? So that's a beautiful explanation here. Meaning that, and in this regard, it's separate from somebody who is not a chassid. And that is that somebody who's a chassid is constantly thinking about the potential to be able to do good to other people. He goes through his life thinking about, proactively thinking, how I can make somebody else's life better. In one of these 3 ways we're going to discuss, physically as far as belongings are concerned, or spiritually. That is his way of going through life. I don't know if I told you the story before, I probably have, but just something very nice happened to me a couple of years ago. At one point I had this big car, which the battery went flat. And it wasn't the sort of, it was such a big car that it was not something that easy to get started again. You know, these little battery charger things, just, it was like a joke. So this fellow stopped, Israeli guy, and he said, you know, what's happening? So I said, the car's flat. So he hooked up the cables to his car, and, you know, we went there about 10 minutes, didn't work, and he tried all kinds of things. He was there for about half an hour getting my car started. After several attempts of, you know, I mean, most people would have just, like, after the first attempt go, well, yeah, sorry, can't help you. But that wasn't good enough for him. He stayed there until my car was working. I said, thank you so much. He said, Ma, lo banu la'olam le'echol glida. We didn't come to the world to eat ice cream. So that's a person's, you know, that's somebody who's a chassid. I didn't come to this world to eat ice cream. I came to this world, I was put in this world to help other people, to be good to other people. And that's why you can do it tomid. even if you're not physically actually doing something which is helping somebody else. But that should be your Weltanschauung. That should be your worldview. That is the way you should walk down the street with that in your mind. That you should constantly on your radar be thinking, where is there an opportunity for me to fulfill Hashem's Ratzon, to do good, to help? Yeah, that's what he says here. And not about the ice cream. And he says, "V'lo meira," not to do any bad to anybody. Lo oseh shum pa'ula im yitakein v'teitze mikach ezer ra. In other words, he spoke about this idea in the past. A person has to have eyes in his head. Mia chacham haroed sanolad. Who is a wise person? Somebody who sees what his actions are going to engender. And a person has to think very carefully. Will what I'm about to do, and it could be even in the context of something which is a chesed, and I'm trying to think of an example, it could be that that's going to cause some negative effect. So he has to figure out a way to do that. For example, let's say you have, as a father, this is something that you have to be careful of, like if you do something nice to one of your kids, you have to do it in such a way that doesn't make somebody else jealous. Maybe by doing this hatava to this particular son or daughter, then somebody else would be jealous. Or there are many situations where not only thinking about your actions, that actions which of a neutral kind are not going to echo down the line into something which is going to be negative, but even the good actions that you're doing, you have to make sure that there's no tzad, or you have to do them in such a way. Okay, so he says this is now talking about the body. That's the first of these three subdivisions. Beguf sheyu mishtadel la'azor kol adam b'ma sheyuchol v'yokel mishom ma'alehem. Person has to help everybody in every way he can and lighten their burdens. When it says in Avos, v'noiseh ba'oil am chaveiro. A person should take upon him, together with his friend, his yoke. I mean, quite literally, obviously, let's say in an agrarian society where people were using cattle and lugging stuff, though that would have a very literal application where you go and give the guy a hand. Somebody's schlepping, nowadays as well, you don't have to have an agrarian society, somebody's bringing stuff into the yeshiva and he needs some help, help him carrying his clothes, his bags or whatever it is. So that's literally, but of course there's another side to that, and he says here, a very nice idea. So he says, and even though it says that even though of course it's fit for everybody to do this, but nevertheless somebody who's a chassid will try. He'll go the extra mile, like this guy with my car. He'll go the extra mile. It's not just he'll be Yotzi Zayin on what's considered to be quote unquote chesed. And also, I saw this, I don't know where I saw it before. Nosa el b'chavera also could be something like going to comfort somebody who, Rahman al-Litzlan, lost somebody close to them, to remove the burden from them, to share with them, share with the noisa oil to comfort them in whatever way one can. That's also an aspect of being noisa oil b'chavera. And of course, if he can prevent some bodily harm from coming to somebody or to remove that which threatens such harm, he is mechuyev to do so. Anything he can do. Let's, for example, somebody has problems in his business, or he's not good at counting. He should go over and say, look, I can help you with the business, I can help with your accounting, or I can find you an accountant, or anywhere, anytime you see somebody is lacking in some way. Yeah. So, that's the first aspect we've been talking about. I missed something here as well I wanted to say. Well, let's say somebody got ill, Khalila. A chassid will say, he's not going to say, well, just go to the Kupat Cholim. He'll take it upon himself to try and find, there are organizations which actually do this. Dr. Fira and somebody called Benny Fisher, who's well known in Eretz Israel, that these people set up a chesed organization, what to do, to find you the best possible doctor. You've got to have an operation, God forbid, someone's got to have an operation on their heart, they've got to have an ablation, whatever it is, for arrhythmia, whatever it is. So you can call up these organizations and they will find you who is the best doctor. You don't just sign on and you're on a waiting list there and whoever you get, maybe you get lucky, maybe you won't. No, they will find you. They go into this in great detail. That's an example where a person will go out of his way. Of course, if he has money, he's mechuyev as a chassid. I'm not saying this a person, but a chassid will try as much as he can to use his money or to find out, to get other people to help, to send this person, let's say, God forbid, a rare disease. Maybe you can only get this fixed in America. So you see, there are people who are chassidim who will actually spend a lot of their time and money to get this problem sorted out by sending this person to the best possible doctor in the world. That's called Chassidus. Okay, there's a health service, there are doctors. No, Chassidus says I have to, the best way I can possibly help. So that's number one. Now, mammon, a person's mammon. So the idea here is a person has to help somebody else, his fellow, as far as he can, and protect his property against damage in every way he can. And of course he has to make special precautions to make sure that himself is in no way responsible for being mazik, for damaging him, whether that would be to an individual or to the klal or to the public. And also, Chassidus implies that, again, we saw this idea before, even though there's no immediate concern, but again, have eyes in your head, see where things are going. You must make sure that nothing that he's doing now is going to cause damage down the line. As it says, Chazal has in Perkei Avos base, Yud base, Momon chaverecha, chavev alecha keshelcha. Let it be that your friend's money. By money, of course, it doesn't mean dollars and cents. It means his property, his belongings, his house, everything that he has. That should be as dear to you as were it your own. A person is very, very careful with their own stuff. So that's the way you should look at everybody else's property. Okay, so that's the second way. And the third aspect of this Bein Adam Lechavero, and I think probably we'll have to finish with this, is his nefesh. To strive in this way to give a person, when we talk about nefesh, to give him as much what's called koras ruach, to make a person happy. Go out of your way to make a person happy, to give him, to lighten his spirit. Whether that is by giving him kavod, and he says something interesting here. And even though, let's say, that person himself is obliged to despise kavod, like often you see when a big rabbi comes in the room that and you try and stand up, don't get up. You should still get up. Even you should be mechabed him, even though he doesn't want the kavod. And he brings an interesting case here. Of course, he should do everything as much as he can to anything that is going to make somebody happy. Even small things, and sometimes small things make people happier than big things. That's considered Chassidus. Again, somebody who's got this mindset of going through his life looking for these opportunities will find many of them. I mean, if you program yourself to think like that, I've been put in this world to be an agent of chesed, then you'll be surprised how much there is to do. And it goes without saying, he says, that a person mustn't cause to cause any pain at all to his neighbor in any way. in any way whatsoever. Now he brings an interesting idea here, that he says, even if his kavanah is l'shem shamayim, even if a person's kavanah, by giving this person pain, is l'shem shamayim. And he brings a classic example of Penina, who's Chana's sister, and Chanana was, as you know, childless, and Penina sort of teased her to try, and her kavanah was entirely l'shem shamayim, because she wanted, by teasing her, by afflicting her, to make her daven harder. Nevertheless, for doing this, even though it was l'shem shamayim, but because she was Mitzayah, she was the Chana, v'afal pikein ne'nash b'misas yaladeah chas v'chalila. Her children died as a result of that. So that's what he's referring to here, that a person must not cause pain to anybody, even if it's for all the right reasons, so to speak. Yeah. So as he says, whether it's covered or kindness of any kind, anything that's going to give your neighbor pleasure, even though you're not mechuyev to give people pleasure, but that's the idea of Chassidus. To think, as we said, and to be careful not in any manner whatsoever to give pain. And all of this, klal kol zehu gemilus chasodim, as we spoke about at the beginning. Gemilus chasodim, kindness is the root of Chassidus, chesed. Asher hifligu chamim, as it says, b'shvacha, that Chazal went out to great lengths to affirm how far this should go, and that is that uvechlal zeh redivas shalom shehu hahatova haklalius ben kol adam lechavero, the pursuit of peace. Kodesh Baruch Hu, that's the Kodesh Baruch Hu found nothing better in the world than than shalom. Osei shalom bimramov, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Shalom is the ultimate expression of love and the pursuit of peace. That is the greatest good, so to speak. That's the general promotion of good. That's good in its widest form. And it's interesting that it often says by Shalom, that talks about Aaron HaKohen, who was Oiv Shalom V'rodev Shalom. Why? Because Redifa, pursuit, that's the active part. It's not enough to just love peace. A person has to pursue it, to go after it. That's the whole principle we've been talking about tonight, to be proactive. That a chassid goes through his life looking for opportunities to mitchased with Hashem and with his fellow, and of course, although he doesn't say it here, I think also with himself, to make sure that whatever he's doing, he's being kind to his soul and bringing himself closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yes, sure, questions?
Yeah, so how does this whole idea of...
You can let it go.
How does this whole idea of proactively trying to find opportunities to do chesed for your fellow, how does that work within the model of Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam?
How does it work within the model of Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam?
Sounds
meaning
like you're taking a whole lot of time to, your business is struggling with its accounting, here, let me go and help you out, but shouldn't this person be investing more in his own spiritual growth as far as it pertains to learning Torah? I mean, obviously you're supposed to go out there in the world, but Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam doesn't mean anytime any person has an issue, you need to go get involved in it.
Okay, so this obviously depends very much on the person. If you're really a person who spends 18 hours a day with your Gemara open in front of you, then it could be, I'm not saying for sure, because of course it may depend on, this is something that only you can fix. B'makom, right, ein ish. I mean, again, it's difficult to talk in general terms, but it could be in a certain situation. There's a thing called a mace mitzvah, that even a Kohen Gadol has to bury a dead body that he finds if nobody else is going to bury it. So we see that there are situations where somebody who's a big Talmid Chacham, it could be that, but he could still make the effort to find somebody who could deal with it. Now, most of us, I don't know about you, maybe I'm not giving you the proper covered here, but I'm not sure most of us are on that level where our days are so full of learning that we don't have, for sure in terms of just thinking about things. You know, in the time that you walk from the dining room to the base medrash, what's your thoughts be of? The people you're around, you see the people, how's he doing? Maybe he needs some help. Or even in Talmud Torah, you could say, some bacher comes to the yeshiva and he smiles at you and you say, how you doing? And say, maybe you want to learn some Mishnayos. So you've done a chesed and you can combine the two together. It doesn't have to be like that. Again, all of these things are very specific to where you're holding, where you are, who you are, what's around you. And of course, everybody has to make these calculations for themselves. And I'm not saying that there is no situation of somebody, but even you see Gedolei Yisrael. Gedolei Yisrael go out of their ways. I've had personal experience myself. Even though they're learning, sure as much or if not more than everybody else, they still take it upon themselves. I mean, Gedolei Yisrael got on planes, and I know, for example, Rav Yaakov Hillel, who should be well. He got on a plane, he wasn't well, and he flew to America to raise money for yeshivas. I should be learning. Everybody needs to know exactly what their responsibilities are, what their priorities are in any specific situation, and that can change all the time, and it certainly will change depending on who you are. All of these things have to be put into the calculation. Okay.
Yeah. Can I ask one more?
Sure.
Is giving tochacha the same, and obviously in the right way, is that the same thing as causing a person pain, l'shem shamayim?
That's a good question. I think it's very difficult to give tochacha. It's a very great skill to know how to give tochacha in a way, number one, that doesn't hurt the person, as you said, and also in a way that it can be heard. Chazal teaches you're not allowed to say something to somebody that he can't hear, so to speak. So I think tochacha is very, very difficult. For most of us, I don't think we're capable. I think tochacha requires that you're so close to the person that the person understands 100% that it's coming from love, and that, again, and that it doesn't give him pain. He comes away from whatever tochacha you want to give him with a tremendously positive attitude to the thing that needs to be changed. He doesn't feel that you're how do you say, pulling him out, you're singling him out, or you're criticizing at all. It's very, very difficult, extremely difficult.
In some situations you will have to give tochacha, though. Like, for example, if you have younger brothers or if you have children, that sort of thing. So how do you, if you have to give tochacha?
Again, even with your children, you have to give them tochacha in a way that they are 100% that it comes from love, that there are no other agendas that you have apart from their welfare, that you can't make them feel I'm giving you tochacha, because you're not wearing, how do you say, if you have a daughter and let's say her sleeves are a bit short above the elbow. It's near, so you have to. If you want to give your daughter tochacha, she has to know 100%. It's not because you're worried about the way neighbors are going to say about her. The tochacha has to be, and you can only give tochacha and it's going to be heard. Otherwise, it has the reverse effect.
So no ulterior motives is what you're saying?
You have to have no ulterior motives except the love of the person. Very difficult, because most of us, I would say almost all of us, have ulterior motives.
Yeah.
We don't exist just in one sphere. Everything we do is connected to who we are, where we are, and all the different relationships we have. It's complex, and it's not an easy thing to do. And it's better, in my opinion, if better to not say anything, and find another way. Find somebody else, usually if, there's an expression, when in doubt, leave it out. You know, it's better if you're not sure that this is going to be heard, it's not going to be appreciated, not going to be a positive experience for that person, because that's the whole idea of tochacha, is to get them to improve. So unfortunately, a lot of the time, and without wanting to be critical, but in many educational situations, tochacha has absolutely the reverse effect. It drives people away. And you know, this is a problem in our society. I think sometimes that things are said which are taken the wrong way, or maybe taken the right way, and can be very negative. So again, a person has to always examine his own motives extremely carefully, and be very, very subtle, and not subtle, that's not right, be very, very perceptive and understanding and sympathetic. Not easy. Okay, shkoyach.